Hi Evely, and I will tell you one story of a good viewing. The night was an endless canvas of black, punctuated only by the cold glow of a half-hearted moon. The winds whispered secrets of a cursed past, carrying echoes of a man whose existence had become a living nightmare, a man known only as the Cursed Man. They said his soul was bound by an ancient, malevolent force, his every step a harbinger of doom for those unfortunate enough to cross his path. In a forgotten town hidden behind a veil of desolation and despair, the legend of the Cursed Man had been passed down through generations. The locals murmured in hushed tones of how he wandered the outskirts at night, his eyes gleaming with an eerie, otherworldly light, his presence heralded by a sudden, unexplainable chill. Some claimed to have seen him standing at the edge of the abandoned cemetery, his silhouette merging with the twisted, gnarled trees that lined the graveyard. Others spoke of a peculiar phenomenon, an unearthly glow surrounding his form, as though the very air about him had been set ablaze with a spectral fire. In the small, crumbling village of Blackwood, the curse was no mere myth but an inescapable reality woven into everyday life. Neighbors kept their windows shuttered at dusk, their hearts heavy with dread of the cursed figure's inevitable appearance. Every creak of a floorboard, every rustle in the dead of night, became a sinister reminder of the ancient malediction gripping their souls. On stormy evenings, when the heavens roared and the earth trembled, the air itself pulsed with an impending terror, as if nature were warning of unspeakable horrors lurking just beyond mortal ken. Among those haunted by the tales was a young woman named Elise. Unlike her fearful neighbors, Elise felt an inexplicable pull toward the enigma of the Cursed Man. Perhaps it was her insatiable curiosity or the echo of a long-suppressed connection to a tragic past. Drawn inexorably toward the darkness, she began to delve into the hidden histories of the curse, unearthing fragments of forgotten lore from brittle manuscripts and the trembling confessions of the elderly. Late one night, as torrential rain battered the cobblestones of Blackwood, Elise found herself before a dilapidated mansion perched on a lonely hill, a place said to have been the abode of the cursed soul. The mansion loomed like a ghostly sentinel, its windows dark and vacant, its walls stained with memories of sorrow and despair. Stepping onto the creaking porch, the air turned unnaturally cold, and a distant, mournful wail drifted through the storm. Every step was accompanied by an eerie echo, as though unseen forces were orchestrating a macabre symphony of dread. Inside, the mansion's atmosphere was suffocating, laden with untold tragedies. Narrow, winding corridors lay shrouded in a perpetual gloom where light and shadow merged indistinguishably. A lone, tattered portrait hung crookedly on a wall, the gaunt, sorrowful face in the frame, its eyes following Elise's every move, could well have been that of the Cursed Man. In that chilling moment, the boundary between legend and reality blurred, and Elise felt herself stepping into a nightmare from which there was no escape. Venturing deeper into the decaying heart of the mansion, Elise encountered strange symbols etched into the walls, runes and sigils pulsating with ominous power. The further she wandered, the more she sensed a sinister presence watching her every move. Shadows coalesced into grotesque shapes at the periphery of her vision, only to vanish when confronted. An unseen force tugged at the edges of her sanity, weaving a tapestry of terror and despair that threatened to consume her entirely. In a forgotten chamber concealed behind a warped door, Elise discovered a diary bound in cracked leather. Its faded ink recounted the tale of a man cursed by a vengeful spirit, condemned to an endless night of torment, forever wandering in search of solace. The entries spoke of horrifying rituals performed in secret, of blood that had stained marble floors, and of a fate so unspeakable that any who dared meddle with these forces were doomed to join his eternal suffering. Elise's trembling hands clutched the diary as its poisonous words seeped into her mind. Then, without warning, a sharp creak echoed through the chamber. The diary snapped shut as if hurled by an unseen hand, and the temperature plummeted. Dense fog began to seep through the cracks in the walls. In that heart-stopping moment, Elise realized she was not alone. At the far end of the room, a cold, spectral figure materialized. Its eyes burned with an unholy fire, and its very presence radiated malice. The Cursed Man had awakened from a tormented slumber, his visage twisted in an expression of eternal agony and wrath. Frozen in terror, Elise felt his presence invade her mind. A voice, layered, resonant, and laden with despair, whispered incomprehensible words that churned in her soul like blackened storm clouds. The specter's hollow eyes bored into her, as though trying to extract the secrets of her own haunted lineage. As he advanced, the room's shadows writhed into grotesque shapes, dancing along the walls in a macabre ballet. The diary lay forgotten at her feet, its revelations now a silent testament to the horrors yet to come. Desperation lent her strength. With a trembling resolve, she backed away, her frantic heartbeat echoing on the cold stone floor. The specter wavered as if struggling against the confines of his spectral existence, yet his malevolent energy grew ever more potent. The room warped around him, a twisted distortion of reality where walls melted into swirling patterns of shadow and light and the floor rippled like dark water under a moonless sky. A low, guttural sound, like anguished wails, filled the air, heralding the onslaught of an unimaginable terror. As Elise turned to flee, the mansion betrayed her. The door slammed shut behind her with a force that reverberated through her very bones. In the oppressive darkness, she could feel the relentless pressure of the cursed man's gaze upon her. His silent accusation and sorrowful despair merged into a single, overwhelming presence, a force intent on shattering her resolve and plunging her into eternal madness. The specter's hand, translucent and clawed, reached out and brushed Elise's cheek, leaving a trail of icy fire in its wake. In that single, harrowing touch, a torrent of memories overwhelmed her, images of a childhood marked by inexplicable horrors, moments of laughter long drowned in mourning, and love twisted into a grotesque mockery. In that spectral caress, the boundaries between her own identity and the cursed legacy blurred into a single, terrible fate. Her surroundings came alive with the echoes of a tortured past. Whispered voices recited tales of betrayal and loss, layered in a maddening chorus of sorrow. The cursed man's form began to dissipate into swirling mist, yet his presence remained like a virulent stain, a promise of terrors yet to be unveiled. The mansion's reality frayed at the edges, revealing fleeting glimpses of a nightmarish realm where life and death, sanity and madness were indistinguishably entwined. Elise, trapped in this maelstrom of horror, clutched to the fragile hope of escape. The walls pulsed with an alien heartbeat and the floor trembled as if in anticipation of a dreadful climax. With every step, the specter's presence deepened the encroaching doom, and every whispered secret of the mansion promised another descent into madness. The corridors twisted into endless labyrinths of despair, each turn concealing unspeakable secrets. A sudden violent gust shattered the silence, rattling broken windows and sending ancient chandeliers into a perilous dance. In that split second, the cursed man reappeared at the corridor's far end, his figure defined and terrifying, with eyes glowing with a malevolence that pierced the darkness. In that moment, Elise knew that the curse was not a solitary affliction, but a legacy woven through generations, a dark tapestry in which she now found herself entangled. Every heartbeat resounded like a death knell in the mansion's oppressive silence. Summoning the last vestiges of her courage, Elise took a tentative step forward, determined to confront the darkness that had haunted her dreams for so long. With the rising tension echoing in her veins and the mansion's walls closing in like the trap of a living nightmare, she resolved to uncover the truth behind the curse, even if doing so meant embracing a destiny steeped in unending torment. Her journey through the mansion became a relentless battle against invisible tormentors. The corridors stretched into infinity, each turn more disorienting than the last, as if the ancient structure itself conspired to trap her in an endless loop of despair. Every cautious step on creaking floorboards was drowned by the pounding of her heart, while sporadic flashes of lightning revealed the grotesque decay of her surroundings. Amidst this chaos, Elise clung to a desperate hope that the mansion might yet hold the key to breaking the curse, a key that might also unlock the secrets of her own haunted existence. In a forgotten chamber resembling a grand, forsaken library, Elise discovered scattered pages inscribed with cryptic symbols and half-remembered incantations. Each page pulsed with a latent energy, as if the very words could summon the horrors that lurked in the mansion's shadowed corners. Here, in the dim light of a flickering candelabra, she began to piece together the fragmented history of the cursed man, a tragic figure whose noble soul had been ravaged by betrayal and sealed by an unholy pact forged in blood and sorrow. Even as the mansion trembled and the ghostly toll of a massive bell resonated through the labyrinthine halls, a sound that carried the promise of doom, Elise pressed onward. The oppressive darkness pressed against her, yet the pull of forbidden knowledge was irresistible. With every step, the legacy of the curse tightened its grip around her, binding her fate to that of the tormented specter. And in that overwhelming convergence of terror and determination, she vowed to unravel the mysteries of this unholy curse, even as the true horror of the night began to reveal itself. With the rising tension echoing through her veins, Elise steeled herself for what lay ahead. The mansion's corridors beckoned her deeper into a realm where hope was but a distant memory and every shadow promised new torment. The cursed man, an eternal specter of grief and wrath, was only the harbinger of a fate far more dreadful. Pressing her hand against the cold, rough stone wall, Elise felt the silent pulse of ancient magic, and in that moment she vowed to uncover the truth behind the curse no matter the cost. Amid the labyrinth of nightmares and the oppressive weight of destiny, she embraced the terror that would ultimately define her very existence. The oppressive night had deepened into a void of unrelenting terror as Elise found herself ensnared in the mansion's ever-shifting labyrinth. Every step seemed to tear away at the remnants of her sanity, and the oppressive air pulsed with an unspoken promise of despair. The echoes of her pounding heart reverberated through endless corridors, each turn revealing horrors more ghastly than the last. The mansion had become a living nightmare, its walls a canvas for the dark magic that had cursed the doomed soul of the cursed man. As Elise pressed onward, the spectral glow of flickering candlelight revealed corridors that defied logic, staircases spiraling into nowhere, doors that opened onto black voids, and hallways that stretched infinitely into the abyss. In one such corridor, the whispers of lost souls became audible, disjointed voices recounting unspeakable tragedies and lamenting the cruelty of a fate sealed in torment. Their words clawed at her mind, dredging up memories of childhood fears and visions of a future marred by death and desolation. The mansion's very architecture seemed designed to dismantle hope, each creak and groan a reminder that escape was but an illusion. Desperation mingled with determination as Elise sought a way to shatter the curse. Clutched in her hand was the diary she had found, a cursed relic inscribed with forbidden lore that hinted at a ritual of redemption. The entries described an ancient rite that could sever the bond between man and malevolence, but at a price, the sacrifice of one's deepest essence. As she studied the cryptic passages by the wavering light of a solitary candle, the pages themselves began to tremble, their ink swirling into sinister shapes that mimicked the tortured visage of the cursed man. A sudden chill swept through the room, and Elise shivered as if 1,000 unseen eyes were scrutinizing her every move. At that moment, the silence was shattered by a resounding crash. The ground beneath her feet convulsed violently, and the room's walls buckled as if succumbing to an invisible force. Out of the chaos emerged a spectral parade of figures, lost souls, each bearing the anguished countenance of the damned. They circled Elise, their hollow eyes reflecting the torment of centuries. In their midst, the cursed man appeared once more, his form more defined and ghastly than before. His eyes, burning with an unholy light, met hers with a sorrowful intensity that belied the malice in his being. In that charged moment, time itself seemed to fracture. Elise was thrust into a surreal confrontation where past, present, and future converged into a single, nightmarish tableau. Visions of a once proud man, his life now a tapestry of regret and eternal punishment, flashed before her eyes. She saw him as he had been, a man of honor whose soul had been corrupted by betrayal, forced into a destiny of wandering despair by a curse wrought in blood and anguish. The realization struck her like a physical blow. The cursed man was not merely a specter of horror but the living embodiment of every dark secret and unspeakable sin that had plagued the village for generations. With a tremulous resolve, Elise stepped forward, raising the diary as if it were a talisman against the encroaching darkness. She recited the ancient incantations inscribed within its brittle pages, her voice faltering under the weight of the arcane words. The air thickened as the ritual took hold, drawing forth a palpable energy that twisted the very fabric of the mansion. Shadows convulsed and danced around her, coalescing into grotesque forms that writhed in silent agony. The ground beneath her shuddered, and the spectral figures recoiled as if repelled by an unseen force. But the cursed man did not yield. His visage contorted into a mask of anguish and fury, and with a roar that resonated like the tolling of a funeral bell, he surged toward Elise. His spectral hand outstretched, he sought to rip the incantation from her trembling lips and quench the fragile hope that had taken root. The clash between his malevolent will and her desperate plea sent shockwaves through the mansion. The very walls vibrated with the intensity of their conflict, and the cursed energy spilled over into corridors, unsealing ancient portals that revealed fleeting images of a hellish realm. A world where souls were eternally imprisoned in a cycle of suffering and despair. In that dire moment, the mansion itself became an active participant in the battle. Floorboards splintered and ceilings collapsed as if the structure were writhing in pain. Elise's incantation grew louder, her voice harmonizing with the mournful cries of the long-departed. The spectral figures, once drawn to the cursed man's darkness, now recoiled in terror at the unexpected surge of light and defiance emanating from her. Each word she uttered cleaved through the oppressive gloom, igniting sparks of hope amid the swirling chaos. Yet the curse was ancient and relentless. As Elise reached the climax of the ritual, the diary flared with an unearthly brilliance, its pages ablaze with supernatural fire. The incantation summoned a vortex of blinding light that threatened to engulf the chamber. For a heartbeat, the spectral battleground fell silent, as if the forces of fate themselves were holding their breath. Then, with a resounding shock, the vortex recoiled, its energy coalescing into a singular, searing ray that locked onto the cursed man. In that final, excruciating instant, the man's tortured visage wavered between agony and reluctant release. The spectral bindings that had anchored him to the realm of nightmares began to unravel, his form flickering like a dying ember. A cascade of memories and regrets poured forth, a torrent of sorrow that filled the chamber with the sound of 1,000 broken promises. Elise, caught between relief and despair, felt the weight of centuries lift, even as a terrible emptiness began to seep into the corners of her soul. With the curse now breaking, the mansion trembled one last time, its dark energies dispersing into the night. The spectral figures dissolved into nothingness, leaving behind only echoes of their lament. The cursed man, no longer a vengeful wraith but a tormented soul freed from eternal bondage, faded into the shadows, his eyes reflecting a sorrowful farewell. In that bittersweet moment of liberation, Elise understood that the ritual's victory came at a price, a sacrifice of part of her own spirit, now forever intertwined with the mansion's haunted legacy. As dawn's pale light began to seep through shattered windows, the mansion's horrors receded into memory. Elise stood alone in the silence, the diary clutched tightly in her hands, its secrets now forever etched into her being. The curse had been broken, but the scars of that night would haunt her dreams for all her days. The cursed man had vanished, leaving behind a legacy of sorrow and the lingering question of whether the price paid for freedom was one worth bearing. In the quiet aftermath, as the first rays of morning struggled against the lingering darkness, Elise stepped out of the ruined mansion. The nightmare had ended, but its echoes would forever whisper through the corridors of her mind, a chilling reminder that some curses, once unleashed, are impossible to forget. Thank you very much and see you all in the next video.